Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be going over part 2 of the tutorial for the Repro 5, the overview and guide. And part 2 is going to be all about the tweaks page right here. It's going to be all about the advanced portion of this mod matrix. So all these things down here, the lines, the Q, S, and H, SL, and the effects like the distortions, and all these things down here. And in part 1, we went over all the main profit features and just the main aspects of making most of your sounds. So this is going to be the second part with the rest of the details filled out. Now, just a quick plug, I got 90 presets for the Repro 5. It's called the Prophecy Sound Bank. You can check it out in the link right down below this video. And it's got all kinds of sounds, basses, leads, pads, keys, etc. It's great for synthwave, cinematic, progressive rock, any kind of genres of that sort or any style of your choosing. So just go ahead and check it out down there. That's highly appreciated. Now let's get straight into the video. So let's go ahead, and the first thing that I'm going to cover is this matrix, because we're on the front page here. And also at the end of the video, I'm going to give you kind of a guide for how to set up a template for Repro 5, given all of these pieces of information. So when it comes to the matrix and really the tweaks page in general, there's a lot of like details that are, some are very useful that you could end up using all the time. And some are like very, very specific that you would probably rarely ever use, if ever, unless you have some very exact like purpose of like, okay, I'm doing this specific thing. And I could see it especially more in like just if you're making maybe some kind of like atmosphere or drone or some kind of cinematic thing or something, some kind of special effect or something like that, that some of these would be used, and otherwise you probably would never use some of these features. So let's just get into it real quick. We went over last time the modulation matrix and basically how you can pick a lot of these things here, or any of them here, and route them over to any kind of function just by dragging it over. So we have obviously mod wheel, pitch wheel, control A. So I'm going to go over these real quick here, and then we're going to get into the bottom. These are the routing destinations, and how to use these I explained it in video 1, so go back and check it out, how to just kind of route it around. But obviously we know mod wheel, pitch wheel, control A and B. This is if you have a special type of MIDI controller that maybe has a breath control or a pedal or something else, and that's actually right up here in the preferences. It says right here, control A is breath, B is expression, and you can change those when you click on it. So that's what control A and B does. If you don't have those, it doesn't do anything. We have the LFO, obviously, so we can route our LFO around anywhere without having to rely on the mod wheel, and we can route our mod wheel anywhere without having to use it just specifically as an LFO sort of tool, like in the regular Prophet. Trigger, we went over that last time, is just a little blip when you press a key. It can add a little punch to the beginning of a sound of some effect or something. Then gate is just the whole time you're pressing the key and you let it off. Key follow is just like key tracking. Key follow plus Pitchbend is basically key tracking. And then like you put key tracking as a modulation source, and you add the pitch bend to it. So if you're gonna, put the pitch bend up or down, that adds on top of the key tracking. We obviously velocity, aftertouch, the filter envelope. You can route the filter envelope to anything. Amp envelope, same there. And then voice index. We're gonna get into that next. Okay, so that's all the routings for the main controllers for any of these destinations in the matrix. Now, when we get to actually these things down here. Okay, I'll just go over it one at a time. So like some of these are more useful for some features than others. Okay, like the first line here, this is a kind of a compression of your source here. Okay, so this is useful anytime that if you want to like have a moving control that's like noticeable, like for example, mod wheel, pitch bend, or maybe velocity, like moving, emphasizing more just the tops and the bottoms, but not the middles or something. But the most obvious kind of things is, let's say like you're going to use an LFO, and let's say we're going to drag this LFO to our pitch. Okay, and right now the LFO is this triangle shape, right? You can hear that. Let's just bring it up. So if we can change the shape of the LFO, so this triangle shape, by changing these, you get an idea right here. It says compressed to expanded. So you're just changing the shape of the triangle to feature more like either towards just the top and the bottoms, or to kind of stay more around the middle and go quickly through the tops and the bottoms. So like very compressed, you can see it's more around the top and bottom and quickly through the middle. So you kind of change the shape of this triangle to flatten it out at the top and the bottom. So it spends more time at the top and the bottom and less time in the center. So this is basically just like if you want to have a different shape, like, oh, here's your regular LFO. But let's say you want to have it slightly different shape. None is just basic. You know, and that'll be good for like if you have a drone or a pad or something. You can just imagine like, you know, like you know, it's got this kind of like shape to it that you wouldn't get otherwise, and you can use that to modulate some kind of filter or effect or anything. And then if you bring it to very expanded, you're gonna get the opposite. And then this is just the lesser versions of those. So that's basically what that does. And when you put these together, you can turn multiple ones on at a time, and they'll all affect each other. Okay, so this is like right here. This is basically like a rectifier, it's called, which means like you cut the wave in half, or your source in half, or whatever you know you want to do. So like let's say you put half wave plus, it's gonna have like half a wave, and then it's gonna be flat at the bottom. So plus means it goes up half a wave, and then it's flat. So like you can hear it. So it goes up, and then it's like flat rather than going down. And you can see it in the illustration right here, how it actually would look. Okay. And here, half wave minus is like the same, but inverted. Again, you could imagine how this could be good for like some kind of I could imagine like a machine sound or something, like you have a drone in the background, like an effect. If you're doing like a film score or something, and you have like, you know, you get that kind of effect on some kind of modulation, like a filter, versus just having it like a regular LFO. That, right? So that's kind of, and then you can obviously speed up your LFO, slow it down however you want, and you can use them together. So let's say we do this, like I like how this sounds, and then you can do very compressed. So you get a totally different sound versus just like having it regular. Okay, and then full wave right here is basically like, rather than having a flat, it like goes back up like a reflection. And since it's a reflection, it actually makes it like twice as fast. So you could theoretically also use that to make your LFO go twice as fast. Like, but that's probably not like the main purpose why you would do that. So for example, like full wave minus, it would be the same, but it's inverted down instead of up. And you can see the picture right here. This shows like, okay, this is going to go up, and instead of going up, it's going to get reflected back down. And in the last one, it's going to go flat, etc. So you can see how that works. And it's the same, like, for example, let's say I use my pitch wheel. Now, since I routed this to the frequency here, we want to get rid of the regular pitch bend in this case. So let's take this to 0, so everything is kind of on an equal playing field. So since this is routed, it's already going to work. Now, what happens is actually, like, when I move my pitch wheel up, see it moving up right here? The pitch drops. When I move it down, the pitch drops. Okay? And like one of the tricks I like to use with that is, let's say we're going to bring back a regular pitch wheel effect. And then I like to take this and take it to the cutoff, for example. Okay, and since it's inverted down, it means it's going to go down both times. So like if I basically, like, I have like something running, like some kind of pad or something, like, you get this kind of effect, like right, versus like if you didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? So why is that useful? Because like you can also make it that way, but also even if you go up. You see, that's a trick I like to use. Like, it's really good on you have like long floating pad sounds or atmospheres, and whether you pitch it up or you pitch it down, you get that fade out effect. So that's like one good way to use that. And you can also kind of change the shape of that, again, like very compressed. You can hear it goes out quick. All right, that affects the shape right there. So you can kind of see how these are like reflections. Unipolarize is just like basically takes it from the half. It like starts it basically at like, you see how that's the middle when you do unipolarize right here. It like starts it above the middle when you're in the middle, and the middle gets at the bottom. All right, so that just kind of like brings the whole thing to a different level. And if you want to use that for some kind of effect, you can do that. So you can see again in the illustration how that kind of works. And again, you can combine all of these. All right. One thing I was just going to go quickly into with this slew limiter, for example, all right, is like the pitch wheel. I like to use this one on mod wheel or pitch wheel, for example, slew limiter. We're going to just jump into that because this kind of works together well with these right here. This basically kind of smooths out the transition. Like, fast is a little bit of smooth, and then slow is the most smooth. So like, let's say like we're doing this whole thing like I was doing here. Let me see. Full wave minus, okay, to the cutoff, right? And then we're gonna have, let's do kind of like a pad thing, for example. So like I like to do, for example, like on a pad, I'll do like 3 semitones up and down. Okay, and then you can kind of like, you kind of got to set the release and stuff like that. Let me see. Can you see that? There we have that reflection. But one thing you'll notice is like that cutoff and stuff is a little bit choppy. So by using the slew limiter, it's like we blend it out. Still a little choppy. Let's go to smooth. You hear like it gets rid of that, like that little edginess. And actually, I really like to use like slew limiters. Like one great way is like, you know, I'll show you next in the Quantize, but the slew limiter, a great way I like to use it is like when you're using a mod wheel or a pitch wheel to control something, your hand naturally is like a little bit shaky. Like, so if you're controlling a pad or something else, you're going to get like these stair stepping and like little squiggles around because you can't really move your hand as smoothly as you would like. So by using a slew limiter, you can smooth out your motions mechanically. So like I put that in a few of my patches that I made and other synths. So like Diva has a similar thing on like an atmosphere or something. So you kind of are like controlling the pitch wheel, or you're controlling that cutoff, and you're like, wow, that's so smooth. Like it never shakes, even if my hand is shaky. How do you do that? Well, you use like a slew limiter. And then you put your mod wheel destination or pitch wheel wherever. It's really good for like long sounds and things like that, atmospheres, whatever. So there's that. Okay. Now we're gonna go into the last kind of main thing is this Q, and then the sample and hold is a little bit like very, very specific. You know, if you want to use it for something, you can. But let's just go into this Q real quick. This is Quantize. So like the way that this works is the same way, like it doesn't change your signal in any way. It only lets it be audible at certain intervals. Okay. So like, for example, let's go back and take off. Now I take off this pitch thing right here if I route this to the pitch. And the reason for that is that they're going to kind of add on top of each other. It's going to create some imbalances. So I just want only this, exactly how I program it. Well, let's get rid of that OSC B real quick and kind of bring it back to a straight patch. Okay. And again, like you can hear that slew limiter if I put this. Here it's like. Like, wow, you know, how did I get it that smooth versus like nothing? It's like, ugh. Anyway, so the Quantize, like what it does is it takes whatever like your modulation is and it quantizes it into like steps. So integer is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like semitones. Steps of 2, these are all semitones. Okay, so like, and then you have overtone series, which is not semitones, it's just kind of a mathematical function. Minor scale, minor chord, minor series, major scale, major chord, fifths and octaves. So I'll show you the best kind of ways to use that, and you can also think of different creative ways to use it. But like imagine you're doing your pitch wheel, and you are going here. Now let's go to integers. Well, actually, integers, I'm sorry, is not semitones, really. It's just, oh, it might be. It's like semitones, you know, it's kind of just creates a steppy effect. But, you know, these are steps right here, steps of 2. Like this is 2 semitones. It's very clear and easy to hear. Steps of 3 semitones, like minor thirds. Okay, so it doesn't actually like increase or decrease the range. It just only lets it through at these different step values. Like we can go by fifths, and the higher up you go, the less you're gonna hear because there's only so many fifths in that range. Like right there, I can only manage 1/5. And if we go to like, you know, octaves, there's only 1 octave in there. So that's based on, it doesn't increase the actual range. Now, for example, like I can do that with an LFO. Now, keep in mind with the LFO, you have to select a shape or you're not going to hear anything. Same with the oscillators. So we're going to have a triangle shape. All right. And then let's go ahead and quantize it by integers. Let's go ahead and quantize it by minor thirds. Right, so you can think of a lot of different ways to use that. Like, right, you're kind of doing a host sync and then going by force. And obviously you can also use it in terms of like if you're modulating like a synced oscillator or an FM or something oscillator, that's going to create different shapes for you. Like let's say we're going to take this to a frequency and sync it. That's by minor thirds, fifths. And you can hear, for example, like how that could be already used as kind of like some kind of pad or something. Right? So that's how that can be used. And then the last thing, you can experiment with all these different values. One of the most useful things, and again, you can combine all these together, and like you take this to the OSC-A frequency, and then you put that slew limiter on. You can hear how it smooths it out. Okay, so you get different effects. Okay, so that can create a lot of interesting things, especially if you're doing, again, like atmospheres or different like just sounds, background sounds, effects, etc. Okay, the sample and hold is a little bit funky. The way it basically works is like, let's say I'm using an LFO to oscillator a frequency. Okay, let's say like we're gonna go to an integer like steps of 3. Okay, sample and hold, the way this works is every time like one of these crosses the 0 point, it's going to let off a value, and that's all that it does. So like right now you're not going to hear anything, and then as soon as my mod wheel crosses a 0, it's going to let off one value of 3. So like LFO, well, that's, you can't have an LFO modulating an LFO, but let's say we're going to use a filter envelope. Basically, it's like every time this passes a 0 point, it's going to let off one of those values from that envelope. And obviously, the envelope only goes once and then it finishes. And you can see the rate here. So you could host sync it and put it on 16th notes, for example. So like, again, this is just one of those things where it's very specific. That one, you're probably not going to use it much unless you're doing atmospheres or effects or something very specific. Okay, the last thing I wanted to get into here that's one of the best features, really, is creating chords with your Unison. And the way that works is like when you go to voice index, okay, let's go to the tweaks page. And again, this is not a synthesis tutorial. There's other synthesis tutorials out there as far as like how synthesizer works, how voices work. But each one of your voices here has like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And like you can see how it lights up. Now, one of the things here, for example, is like I like to, this is going into the tweaks, but there's something called round robin, which is like how Prophet 6 works, which means every voice, every time you play it, it's going to switch around. Let me turn off this HQ because this is starting to give me problems with the recording software and my CPU usage. But every time you play, going to switch, or when you turn Reallocate on, each note is going to have a specific voice attached to it always, unless you steal it somehow. Okay, but let's go to Reallocate off so you can hear different ones each time. So like basically voice index is like, okay, these are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's just go to like 3 voices so we can see it more easily. So each one of these is 1, 2, 3, right? And that's your voice index. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's your value. And this goes to oscillator A frequency. Now keep in mind, when you have 3 voices, you run like a unison, you have actually like 3 of these oscillators running at once. Okay, so like, but we're not using unison now. So as we bring this up, all right, what happens is each runs through each of the voices. I'm only pressing 1 note. Okay, and so it runs through each one of the voices each time I press a note, and it puts out 1, 2, 3 by a certain depth to the oscillator A frequency. So you might say, what's the best use of this feature? If you go to the chord presets that are built into Repro, you're going to see this used on like every one of them. This is when you're running like unison. Now it's going to run like all 3 of them at once. So when you have it by integer, for example, quantized by integer, or like not, you know, you can find chords in this spread. Like there's some kind of chord. And then when you use voice detune, this is like the sense detuning of each voice. And every time you select a different quantization, like integer, like easy ones to hear, for example, are like steps of 3. Some of these are going to be dissonant. That's good for like techno music and stuff, like Detroit techno or something weird with different chord tones. Or you can put it on 2 voices and you just get 2 notes. Go to like try steps of 5. And if you stack more voices, you're going to get more increasing steps of 5. Now this just goes to oscillator A. So if we turn up oscillator B, we're just going to get this in the root tone. So that's like a way to add some root tone or whatever other pitch you want to add in on top of that chord. And then again, every time you quantize it differently, like you get a different thing. That's fifth. And keep in mind that the reason you're not hearing as many intervals, the more wider you go, is because there's only so many in this range, just like your other quantization. Same with like minor chord. Right, major chord. You add more voices. Or less. This is your voice detune. So like this is really useful if you're making like techno sounds, Detroit house or old school house and stuff like that. You have a lot of these chorded sounds. I can't get into like what every single interval and combination is, but you play around with those and like tuning of the oscillators. And keep in mind, you can also like stack two of them. Like this, let's say this one is major, and this goes to oscillator A, and this one's minor, and this goes to oscillator B, and then you tune them up, and you create like a fat chord of some sort with a certain number of voices, and then you spread the voice detune, and now you have like one note playing that chord, and you can create like techno tones, house, stuff like that, very common, as well as obviously pads, atmospheres, and all kinds of stuff like that if you want to get beyond just the basic 2 oscillator detuning with that you can get with the one voice. Okay, so that's how chord creation works. So now let's go to we're going to go to the tweaks page. All right, tweaks page right here is like let's just go through each one of them real quick. First one, let's go. First one here is going to be LFO DC or no DC. This applies to the Sawtooth and the square wave only. And basically with DC, they're always positive values, and no DC, they cross negative and positive. And you'll just hear a difference when like, let's say you put like, we're going to use a square wave LFO, and we're going to put it to our oscillator A frequency. And if you put no DC, DC just makes it like 0 to positive, and no DC makes it 0, makes it negative and positive. And that can be useful if you're running different like effects with the mod wheel, for example, like you bring in the LFO and you want it to kind of be more in the center rather than always going up, then you put like no DC. Okay. Right here, this is very useful. This is our Sawtooth. On the regular Prophet, the Sawtooth is always going up. And sometimes it can be a little annoying because it's sometimes feels more useful to have it going down. Let me turn off this quantization. If you just invert that, you get the inverted Sawtooth LFO. Then we can go here, the voice reallocation, we already kind of went over that. Round robin, you can look that up. Let me turn off that LFO real quick. Round robin, every note goes around. I always like to use round robin. That's like the default, always on the Prophet 6, for example, is round robin. But a good reason to not use round robin is when you're doing filter FM, because like if you're putting each voice to the filter, then you always have a stable pitch rather than it changing every single note. So that's like, if you know what you're doing really with the filter FM, for example, or some other specific cause, you can put reallocate on and you have a more stable effect. But generally, I like the more analog effect of reallocate off because each voice is a little bit different. So like if you turn up voice detune, it detunes all these voices and you can hear the same note. It's like... The more you turn it up, the more you can hear it. It's like... And just having it on a little bit gives you that natural kind of analog slight detuning between each voice, and is always kind of going up and down, and that's a very good sound, I think, for most things. Note priority, and also you have here voice panning. So you have to do it manually, but each voice is like, you can pan it left, right. For example, you have 2 voices, and then that's one left, one right. I kind of wish they just had like a spread control, but they don't, so you have to do each one individually if you set up a specific patch. And when I go in my templates later, I'll show you how I kind of have them always kind of set up that way. I usually have like voice 1 in the center in case I'm doing a monophonic patch, and then like I spread out my other voices by default a certain amount in my template, so I don't really have to worry about it too much unless I want to change it. And then this is note priority. Its last is your normal. So, and then high note is like when you're using only one voice. You hold the high note, you press the low note, it doesn't sound. And low note is you hold the low note, you press the high note, it doesn't sound. No real point to ever use that unless you're just want some very specific effect, you want to emulate the old school analog. Last is like, again, this is one of those things that's like very peculiar that you would probably never use. I just always keep it on last. So there's that. There's the voice panning. We went over the pitch bend range already. This is just your pitch bend range. You know, how far up and down your pitch bend goes up and down. So that's 3 semitones. And then here we have something very useful, which is you can make your mod wheel here. You remember in video one, we went over how you can turn this to like a noise source instead of the LFO. So like this, and you bring up the mod wheel, and you get that kind of noise effect. Modulation. You can switch that to a sample and hold, like the R2D2 by clicking sample and hold. And you'll see here it says sample and hold. And now it goes by the rate of this LFO. So that's what that does. It's very useful. Okay. Then we just go here. This is the oscillators. Normally just always use Prophet 5. If you want like an old, like detuned more sound, like a more vintage sound. And when I say more vintage, it already sounds pretty vintage as is on Prophet 5. And be careful when you use these because they can get a little out of control. But, you know, you just want that more sloppy detuned sound. You put Prophet 5 old and it's just kind of a wavy detuned kind of key by key Prophet 5 oscillator. Prophet 1, this is like the Repro 1 oscillator, Pro 1. Ideal is like a digital oscillator, just like clean if you want like a very digital sound for some reason, like you want to try to make a super saw or something. You know, you never know what you want. It's the same thing here. And then bottom, when you click bottom, it just makes your triangle shape louder. And this is good. Like we went over how to add more bass by adding the triangle. For example, with Oscillator 2, when you click bottom, you add even more triangle. So that can, with the Prophet 5 shape. So that's what that's for. Then this is just inversion for this Sawtooth. The main use for that, inverted versus normal, is like probably using this again as an LFO. So you can have the same effect like right here. You have an inverted versus normal Sawtooth, or you can use it for other factors as well. And then let's just go here to the filters. The main thing on the filters, the default on your initialize patch is always like poly. And when you actually read the manual, it says like poly is based on the grandfather of the Repro. I'm not sure what that means. But the thing about poly is like this guy Starsky on YouTube who does synth reviews, he compared the Model 80, the soft tube, with the Repro 5 with the Prophet 5, I think it was revision 3 or something like that. And he said, well, this Model 80 sounds exactly on the filter like the Prophet, but the Repro does not. And he couldn't get it sounding on point like a Prophet. Okay. And I think the reason for that is because he is by default on the poly filter. And the poly filter is a little weird. One of the things about it too is very unstable. Like the cutoff. Let's turn this. It kind of like goes up and down like a little bit. Dun, 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 dun. And it has this kind of steppy effect. It goes up and down a lot, and it has just a specific sound. You know, when you put it on the rounded, and I've done tests with this because I had hands-on with the Model 80. I've made patches for that as well. And the rounded is the one that sounds just like the Model 80, like dead on. And the Model 80 sounds dead on to the Prophet revision 3, I think, or whatever. So really the rounded one is the one I like to use all the time in my default. And the other interesting thing is when I went to Repro 1 and I compared the Repro 1 to some recordings of the Pro 1, like the Behringer Pro 1, which is basically sounds identical to the real Pro 1. Clearly, the crispy filter that's on the Repro 1 on default is not sounding like the Pro 1, but the rounded is, which tells me that the rounded model is a very common chip for the Prophet models, including the Pro 1 and the Pro 5. So really, I like to use the rounded for the Repro 1, and I like to use rounded as my default for the Pro 5, and I just always use rounded unless I want to switch it to one of these other ones. Like driven is like an overdriven thing. Crispy is a little lighter of a filter. Poly is, you know, this kind of whatever. They have their own sounds, but the rounded versus the poly, you'll hear like if you make like a higher resonance patch, like a resonant patch, the poly goes up and down a lot. The rounded is very stable, and it just sounds like the real, like it really sounds dead on to like the Model 80 and, you know, the Pro 1. So this is a good one that I like to use. That's all I'll say about that. This envelope amount, this is plus and minus. You can get inverted envelope. So like in this case, let's use a rounded filter that I like so much. And then when we have this minus, you have an inverted filter envelope like this. So you should know, you know, what inverted filter is. So that's a way to invert it right there. This versus positive, which is just regular. Okay, this is just says whether your key follows just the keyboard tracking, or if you want to add the pitch bend to it. If you add keyboard plus pitch bend, basically what that does is, like, if you have keyboard tracking on, it's also going to affect it when you do the pitch bend up and down, which can be useful for some sounds like funk sounds or whatever, or any kind of sound really. When you bring that pitch bend up and down, it's going to affect the filter. Okay. And that's great to use right there. One thing on the mixer right here is you'll see this as noise and FB. Okay. And what this does is, typically on the Prophet 5, this is a noise, but in the Pro 1, there's an option to turn this knob either into noise or feedback. So FB makes us just like the Prophet 1, where you turn this on feedback. So it feeds the oscillator back into the filter. That's especially where, like, you're going to hear this oscillator volumes makes a big difference, and playing with your output and stuff. And it just boosts like bass and lowers resonance, and it has that feedback effect, you know, for a different type of sound. So that's the difference right there. And then right here, these are our envelope tweaks. This is, again, a very specific type of thing that I would never even use, and I don't really see any reason to use it. Just leave it on analog. Ideal, again, this is like, if you want to put ideal oscillators and ideal envelopes, you know, you're getting like just a digital synth sound if that's what you want. But ideal is like a digital envelope. Analog is like your regular Prophet envelope. High sustain, it just like a weird effect where, like, if you basically bring this down and then like it says like it jumps, like if your sustain is over 85, it just jumps to it from the attack, which is like you can hear a little bit of a, okay, that's like high it's just a weird little glitch that's in some old Prophet models that, like, they put it in there because some of these things, again, is like useful if you have like sound effects. One shot is this is a little easier to hear if you're just doing it on the amp envelope. So let's do it on the amp envelope. One shot is like basically it doesn't count your holding of the key. It turns your decay into like a percussion. Like you basically get AD. Okay. And it goes down to whatever this sustain is, and it stops. So when you bring this all the way up, that's short because it doesn't really go down anywhere. But the more it goes down, the longer it is, and it stops, and then this can add a release. So it's just like this kind of, like the best way to really use it is kind of like just AD. And this is like that DFAM, for example, like a percussive synth. It just, you get an AD envelope. And then piano 1 and 2 is kind of similar to the one shot. So it's just a little bit different with the way the sustain and release works. Analog is the one that I just use most of the time because it's for most of the effects. and just keyboard sounds, synth sounds, whatever. And maybe the only one I would consider using otherwise is that one shot if I'm making like a drum or something. I want to make like a percussive effect. You know, other than that is basically just analog. Microtuning is if you load up a microtuning file. You know, if you know what that is, that's again something very peculiar, and you turn it on here. That's the microtuning file if you activate it. That's basically all of the tweaks that are here. Okay, and then let's just go real quick through the effects. They're pretty straightforward. So like we're gonna go here on the effects, and the effects. This is like a distortion unit. It's called a per voice, which just basically means like it sounds smoother when you play it polyphonically because it doesn't interact in weird ways. But you get soft clip, hard clip, foldback, and Corrode is a bit crusher. Okay, and these are just 3 different distortion models. Soft is like a little bit of a softer overdrive. Hard clip is like just a hard clipping overdrive, like a 303 distortion or something. Foldback is a little similar to hard clip. It's called like Rectify, but it has a similar sound, but a bit different. And Corrode is just a standard bit crusher. So like there's like bit rate, crush, mix. So this is just basically a distortion unit. And this is a tape emulator, or like different kinds of tape. So these are all just different tape models that you can try out, and they each have their own sound based on the input gain and the style. This is Lyrebird is just a straight up delay. You can have your different times, like sync short, sync long. Okay, unsync is just like a free delay, and then chorus. So like you turn this on sync 16 clean. This is like a just a regular delay, and regen is like how long it delays for. Your mix and your time is like how long each specific delay is. Okay, echo is like this kind of straight mono delay. Ping pong is like a back and forth. Okay, swing is like adds like a dotted 16th note. Groove is like another type of timing. Usually I just use ping pong or echo. And then modulation adds like pitch differences between the, it can give it a more natural sound or like a more moving sound versus a very clean delay. Okay, and then there's bright, dark, and clean. These are just tonalities of the delay versus like bright. And clean is just natural. And when you use chorus, basically all that does is makes a delay really short. And it makes it so short that it sounds like a chorus. But each of these things still have different effects. So like, you're gonna hear a different effect when, especially the modulation. This is like your chorus mod, turns into like a chorus modulation. Same with like regen. Because this is not a real chorus, it's like a delay that's so short it turns into a chorus. So you can get weird effects with regen, or just leave it down or something like this, like regular. And then this is like your chorus time. When you have it real short, you get a more clean chorus. All right, so that's basically that. Resonator or EQ. EQ mode, this is just a 3-shelf EQ, low, medium, high. These are the frequencies, and these are the levels. And when you turn the Q up more on the EQ, that affects this only this medium like band. This is, you have to look up how an EQ works, because that could be a whole thing on its own. But basically you turn on the EQ, and then this boosts the level. And then you turn this more up, and this is spreads this out, makes it less resonant. Or actually more resonant, I'm sorry. So this is more of a sharper Q, and this is less. That's like a regular. And this is more sharper. And resonant is basically like having 3 of these rather than these bottom bands, it's like having three. You see, there's like turns this into three positive ones, and then when you turn up more resonant, you can hear it more, less. It's more transparent. And the reason people use this is like they set the frequencies like this to like a chord ratio or something, like 50, 75, you know, and then like let's say 90 or something, right? And this is a gain. And it can create like vocal effects or other things. You know, it can be cool in like some patches. It's a pretty specific effect, but if you know how to use a resonator, you can do that. Drench, you just like a basic reverb. So you have your dry wet, your tone, your reverb time, and the pre-delay. This can kind of double as a delay effect. Like if your delay is being used by chorus, for example, like this, you turn on your drench. If you turn on the pre-delay, you get like a delay effect. Okay. And then they can also like just increase the perceived space of the sound. Like a bigger sound has more pre-delay and a tighter sound has less. But also if you turn this all the way down, you get a thicker reverb. Okay. And then the last one here is the sonic conditioner. Sonic conditioner is pretty straightforward. Transient just adds a punch if you have a fast attack, or it can get rid of a punch. Okay, that's a specific effect. The only reason to ever change this width is like if you're using chorus or delay. Like if you're using a ping pong delay, for example. Like this. We're going to take this to delay. So the width is like if you're using just this as a delay, like a ping pong delay stereo. This is the only time you would ever use it really, or with a reverb maybe, because these have like a stereo effect to them. You turn on your sonic conditioner and you have to put it after your stereo effect. So in this case, let's put it at the very end. That makes it mono. But when you don't have a delay or a reverb, this is already mono, so it doesn't make any difference. You just keep the width at 100. That's like regular. So you don't have to put it at 50. You just keep it at 100. That's regular. Okay, and it only goes down. Gain is just like you either turn it down. Again, you have to turn each one of these on. But anytime you turn it up past 50, you get an overdrive. This is just another distortion. And when you overdrive it, you have to turn down the volume here if you want to not make your synth sound too loud. It's kind of like, becomes like a little bit of a soft clipper at the end. Okay, anytime you see that red light go off, it's over 50%. So that's what that's for. And it can also just be used like if something is too quiet, even with that volume all the way up, and the way you set up your patch, you just turn this sonic conditioner and it gives you extra volume. But be aware it's always overdriving when it's over 50. And the last thing about these is each of these go in a certain order. And you decide the order. And you won't see it change here. You only see it change here. Which means like, let's say I want the very first thing is like I want my gain. Okay. And then like after the gain, I want to put, my tape and then like my reverb. But let's say I want to put the gain, because in this case, I would use this if I want to use that overdrive clean, for example, before I don't want to have it overdrive my reverb. Okay. And, same thing here. Like, let's say I want to put the EQ after the reverb, then I put my drench first, turn it on like that, then it's reverb, then EQ, or the other way around. So you got to play with that. If you put like that velvet tape after your reverb, then you're using a tape on your reverb. If you put it before your reverb, you're using the tape first, then you're putting a reverb. So that's kind of how the order that works. So that covers everything in the tweaks, effects, and this matrix. And the last thing that I wanted to show you guys real quick that I think is very important is how to set up a template. Because once you set, I'm kind of like very obsessive with templates, because like if every time that you start a project or you start doing sound design with like a synth like the Repro, and you have settings that are like not very good, so then you have to do what? Like go to this tweaks page and do your little voice panning and change the reallocation and change this and that and the filter type and do all these things every single time before you ever start like creating a sound. It's just a massive pain in the ass. And you know, the way it's set up on default on Init doesn't really sound the best, in my opinion, that this synthesizer could sound. So I'll show you my way that I have the default patch setup. And let's just go to here. I go to my user, and then I go to Init Model 80. This is calibrated after the Model 80. Believe it or not, I mean, I got my hands on the Model 80. I like how it sounds, and I've heard it compared to the Prophet 5, and it was so close, and I'm like, okay, this is probably calibrated like a Prophet 5. And I got everything calibrated sounding like basically identical to like the way that the Model 80 is calibrated. And I'm very happy with it, and this is how I like to have my initial preset. So every time I start playing, I'm exactly ready for sound design, and everything is sounding real crispy. So the key factors in this particular situation are that I have first, my output is set up a little bit higher, and I like to have my oscillators like not go all the way up, but I like to think of them as having like their max around 7 right here, you know. And then when I make patches, and then like this is more like driving the filter. So because as I went in video 1, it adds a little bit of a different resonance, so that's why I turn my output up. I like to just turn up oscillator A and turn down the other stuff so I can just hear a clean patch. Okay. And then the other main factors of this is on the tweaks page, I set the reallocate to off, so I get the round robin effect of like the Prophet 6. If you're going to do like the filter FM, you can always change that back to reallocate on, you know, but typically I just have it on off, so it has that natural up and down kind of effect, and it works real well with this voice detune. I tested this with them against the Model 80 and playing chords and things, and really I found that it wasn't really at 0. It's about at 16. So every time that your voice goes through, it just like detunes slightly, and that has a different voice sound on chords, like versus this. This is very straightforward, very clean, versus something like with 16, for example. It has a little bit more of a natural movement. It's not so precise like a DCO or something. And again, you know, if you turn this up, you can hear that effect. So, but at about 16 is great. And then so I leave that there. And then on my tweaks page, I take this filter to rounded, and we went over why I like it at rounded. And I'll leave that there. And then on my voice pannings, I have the first one at 0. So if I turn this to a monophonic, I'm not like having a left channel signal. I'm always just having it straight down the middle. And then the other voices, I like to put it at 5, like a real Prophet 5. And I pan them a little bit left and right, you know, like 5, 7, 3, something like that. So I get that panned out sound across my keyboard, and then I can always go in and pan them more or less depending on how I want to have it set up. And those are really like the main factors of my template. All you do to save a template is you select local, and then you make sure that right here on the preferences, it says save presets to selected folder, and then you save it, and you just get rid of your name, whatever, and you save it like this, default, and you press OK, which is what I've done. And then in that case, it always loads up that every time I open Repro. And then I also have it saved in my own user folder. So in case I get away from something, I don't have to reopen the whole synth. And to get back to that default, I can just select it from my preset window. So that's the default patch. So I hope that helped you out a lot. I know it's a lot, but that's the end of the Repro 5 with this in video 1. So make sure you go back, check video 1. This is video 2. And it just covers everything you need to know about the Repro 5. I hope you enjoy it. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe for more. And I hope you have a great day. And check out those patches again down below in the below this video. Have a good one.